Hey guys, it is Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. It's time for another episode of Conversations with Commodores. Now, tell me if you've had a 3 month stretch where you've gotten married, you got a birthday coming up, and you're closing on your first house all within 60 days. Well, my guest tonight, number 19, coming out of Montgomery, CJ Duncan. Check in. Check. How you doing, bud? It's so good to see you.
You know what? It's good to see you, Bernard. It has been a heck of a spring, but you know what? I wouldn't want it any other way. It's been a blessing.
And I wouldn't want to have it any other way without mentioning that one of the men in attendance at your nuptials is on with us right now. Primetime Sims is in the house.
Oh, D Sims. What's up, Six?
Six, I got to get you on the show. Come on now.
Yeah, come on in. Come on, man.
And a man who shares the number 6, the golden leg of Vanderbilt football. We got Jimmy Arnold in the house tonight, too. Hey, Jim. Good to see you, bud. Awesome.
That's great. That's
awesome.
great.
How in the world did you get out of Montgomery, Alabama, and not end up playing for Auburn or Alabama? We got to start right there.
Oh man, you know what? There's a handful of stories that I could tell you on that situation. But you know what? When the good Lord said I needed to be 5'11", and that's what I am. And so, but I grew up playing quarterback, loved quarterback, and didn't want to play anything but quarterback. And so, I would like to think that I had a pretty successful career in high school playing the position, and I wanted to wait it out and see what I could get as a quarterback. And at the time, everybody wanted a Cam Newton. So it didn't work out for me at that particular position. But, junior year, senior year of high school, teams came around like the Auburns, Kentucky's, things like that, in Vanderbilt, of course, said, hey, what do you think about being an athlete? We'll recruit you as an athlete, get you on campus. We'll see what happens once you get here, right? And so Auburn specifically wanted me to play corner. And I said, Coach, is there any other way? Is there any other way that I could come play at Auburn and not play corner, play on the opposite side of the ball? And he said, man, we need you at corner. I said, Coach, I'm sorry, but I gotta move on.
And who was the Auburn coach at the time?
So this was Gus, and at the time I was on the phone with Trooper Taylor.
So you could have been at Waffle House, or no, Waffle House after getting the Gus bus.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and we grew up big Auburn fans. My mom went to Auburn. She was there during the heyday of Bo Jackson. So everything we knew was Auburn football, and that's really what motivated me, encouraged me to want to play at the Division I level, but specifically the SEC. Coming out of high school, I told my parents SEC or bust. So living those days, I guess when I really started getting serious about watching football, Auburn had Jason Campbell, Cadillac Williams, Ronnie Brown, Carlos Dansby, all those guys really kind of and they don't know this, but they kind of shaped what my football career was going to look like going forward. So,
and Mississippi State, I know your brother played at Mississippi State, but I can't remember the age difference and how he ended up there and why you didn't end up in Starkville.
Yeah. So similar situation, went on several visits in Starkville. My brother and I were about 6 years apart. And so I guess the story behind him going there is Coach Shoop. He was our defensive coordinator at Vanderbilt my freshman year. And he always just took the time to come speak to the family and speak with Colin and things like that. And my brother just remembered that. And as he was getting recruited throughout high school, he was much what's the word? He was recruited a lot more than I was. He had every offer in the Southeast. It felt like he had the Floridas. He had the Alabamas and Auburns, things like that, and North Carolina. He was really waiting on Georgia, to be honest with you, but it was kind of between Georgia, Mississippi State, and North Carolina. That's where he kind of nailed it down to. He wanted to go out of state. He had made up his mind early on in his high school career. He wanted to go out of state. And so those were the 3 schools. And you probably add South Carolina in there as well. But Coach Shoop, back when I was playing, he probably didn't know at the time what he was doing, but it ended up working out for him. And Colin decided to go to Mississippi State, hard-nosed defensive program. And that's how he was built. He came out the womb wanting to take somebody's head off. We had to tell him as a kid, hey, start going for some interceptions. Don't go for the layout. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That's how he ended up at Mississippi State. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Speaking of awesome, we got some more Commodores in the house. We
Okay.
got Chris Griffin, Kenny Cole, Dwayne Jones. Let's see if we got anybody else that's rolled through here. Guys, we got CJ Duncan, originally out of Montgomery. Now he lives in Birmingham, soon to be a new homeowner in Homewood, Alabama. And we got Cheat. We got Marshall Cheatham in the house. Hey, Cheat, how you doing, bud? There's been a history of quarterbacks from South Alabama making their way to Tuscaloosa. Listen to me, to Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, present company excluded. We got Larry Smith.
Okay.
Chris Nixon.
Yeah.
And there's a third one, and I'm drawing a blank, and please forgive me. Dwayne, who am I forgetting? There's another quarterback from South Alabama that came up. And Walter Taylor, who just transferred, was on the roster this past year. He's from South Alabama. Anyway.
Okay.
So you get up to Vanderbilt, but what are the promises, or not the promises, but what's the conversation with you about what position they're expecting you to be playing?
So, throughout the summer, you're lifting 7-on-7s, things like that. Mm-hmm. I would say I'm probably primarily working out with the running backs at the time, kind of summer leading into fall camp, playing really well at the position. Myself and Ralph Webb were the only freshmen at running back, but we had a loaded room.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What, it was the fall of 14, or am I wrong?
13.
Fall of 13. And then who are the vets in the running back room before you and Webb showed up?
So you've got Seymour, you've got Kimbrough, you've got Wesley Tate, Derek King, and then you've got myself and Ralph Webb. Yeah.
What you got is some competition. That's some pretty good athletes right there.
Absolutely. And all of us were so different, but we all got the job done one way or the other. Seymour's one of those guys. I mean, you just can't touch him, man. He puts that foot in the ground and he's gone. And I've never seen anybody catch Brian Kimbrough from behind. And then you've got Wesley Tate, who's he's like a brick house, but also runs a 4.3. You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah.
And Ralph Webb also kind of a speed guy too. And my thing was I was more probably like Seymour than anybody. I was just quick in small spaces. And so I kind of stayed right there in that running back room throughout the summer and in fall camp, and then we get into the season and now it's time to start doing scout team, right? So Coach Franklin basically redshirted our entire class. I think there was 2 guys that weren't redshirted. Darius Sims, who may still be in the chat, and then also Jordan Cunningham. Those 2 guys played immediately.
Well, I was going to say those 2 guys are pretty memorable, including number 6 is still in the record book, but we'll get him on his day.
Yeah.
But keep going.
Yeah. And he'll have plenty of stories for you. That guy meant so much, not only to Vanderbilt but to our class. And I don't know that he even knows the extent of that, but he deserves his flowers. He really does.
Well, he's going to get him because we're going to give him 2 hours. We're going to have a good long one. And
absolutely.
I'll know Zach turned out to be a pretty decent player, and he's probably in his 7th season maybe in the pros. I can't keep up, but I know he's been a massive contributor for his teams over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was my freshman year. So you get started on scout team, and there was one week where I had to imitate somebody else's receiver on the other team, right. And Coach Franklin was like, hold on, and Coach Shoup as well. And so after they saw me kind of running routes and catching the ball, they said, no, I think you may be a slot receiver. So that's kind of how that transition happened for me.
Do you know Coach Shoup's college career history? You know anything about his history?
You know what? I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know it in detail.
He was a quarterback at Swanee. He and my brother played together at Swanee.
Okay.
And then about his pro career and all of
right,
that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he was on the show a while back. What a great dude.
He's awesome.
Fella.
He's awesome. We as a family, we truly appreciated him. He was he was absolutely awesome during the recruiting process. As you know, it's stressful.
Yeah.
But with my brother, he was 10 out of 10.
If you want some entertainment, go find the podcast that he and his wife have about
Hmm.
life in North Carolina. I promise you, it is very entertaining.
Won't
But
let me
I
down.
want to talk
Okay.
about coming out of St. James 3A,
4A. Well, you
4A.
know what? You're not wrong. They're 3A now, but when I was there, we were
They were
4A.
4A.
Yeah.
At that level, it's excellent football. Don't get me wrong, but you're coming from a very small school,
Hmm.
very small environment where you're big fish, little environment, and
Hmm.
now you're sitting in a receivers and a running back, and then soon to be receivers, very talented room where everybody's got these talents. And I always like to ask, I want you to share a little bit about your transition athletically, academically, socially. Did you get homesick? Did you think about coming home? Did you talk to us a little bit about that experience, that first semester while you're up in school in Nashville?
Well, you know what? It hit me in the summer. I uh, being with Coach Galt during those days,
Mhm.
as a high school quarterback at a 4A private school, half the time they just don't want you to get hurt. They're like, hey,
That's
look,
right.
whatever you
That's
need to
right.
do, you let us know. No type of I'm sorry, we've got a dog.
Yeah, but we got to know the dog's name.
So this is Doves, and then
Oh,
we also have a Jade as well. So
nice, nice.
um, yeah, but
They're welcome to
anyways,
make an appearance anytime. No worries.
well, I'm sure Doves will announce himself again at some point. Um, but yeah, no. So that summer, it was just an adjustment. It really was. I had never ran that much in my life. I'd never lifted that many weights in my life. Being a football kind of baseball guy,
Yeah.
and you're protecting your arm a lot too. So you just don't do all those things. And so I feel like I was a naturally strong person, but I just never been that sore or ran that much. And everybody else, they were just kind of in rhythm, especially the other guys. They kind of knew what to expect. They were doing things what
You're talking
seemed to
about,
be
but you're talking about the veterans.
the best. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
not
yeah.
not the other new guys
Not the
like
other
me.
freshmen. No, not the other freshmen.
But at
But
least you had the experience of living and growing up in humidity where your freshman
Mhm.
counterparts were from the north. I bet it hit them like a ton of bricks.
Oh, for sure. So not only is it an adjustment on your body and your mind, but now you add the like you said, the weather and all that to it. That's an extra factor as well. But yeah, no, I called home. And my dad checked on me quite frequently, and I say, Dad, I don't know. I'm like, these guys are different. They're bigger, they're faster, they're in way better shape than I am. I thought I had it all under control. I've worked my butt off to get where I was, but this was just another level. And he just said, man, stay the course. You know what I mean? So I stayed the course and was able to kind of get through that summer. And then once you got through the summer and you kind of have something to look forward to, like a game during fall camp, it's like, all right, it's not too bad, not too bad. And I kind of I would like to say that, I'm just a football player. Once the ball is kind of rolled out, it all kind of comes to you. It don't matter what level of football you play. If you can play ball, you can play. So and I grew up playing against Pee Wee and on. I grew up playing against very strong competition, best competition in Montgomery,
Mhm.
and really South Alabama. And a lot of my former teammates, went to the Carvers, who was 6A and things like that, and ended up playing at Alabama or Auburn. So, the competition aspect of it wasn't foreign to me, but getting adjusted to the summer workouts and winter workouts was probably the toughest challenge for sure.
Well, CJ, once you hit the field in fall practice, were you able to maintain that athletic, I'm going to call it athletic confidence, that just knowing that you had the skill set that could compete, or was that also tested a little bit in your mind?
You know what? It was definitely a lot more physical than what I had dealt with coming out of high school. But as far as instinctual things, being quick on my feet, catching the ball, things like that, I felt like that was all just kind of second nature. I didn't necessarily feel like that wasn't anything I was capable of or not capable of doing. But when you get hit, it lingers a little longer than it did in 4A football. So
All right, you got to give us what I always call the SEC welcome to the SEC moment. Did you
okay.
get a big hit? Did you give a nice catch? Did you do something that just said to you, holy smokes, I am no longer at home. I am on this big guy football right here.
You know what? uh, there's a few. There's some that are related to me, but there's also some. So once I kind of established myself as a scout team all-star freshman year, Coach Franklin allowed me to travel to every game. So I looked up to Jordan Matthews so much as a freshman, and also Jonathan Krause, who
Oh,
doesn't get enough credit for who he was to Vanderbilt as
absolutely.
well. But I would go to games and watch Jordan just
Mhm.
do his thing, right? But there was a couple games where he's coming across the middle and just it may have been the Ole Miss game, maybe in the first game of the season,
Oh,
freshman year, and he gets rocked, and he's on all fours, and I'm like, Jordan's like 6'3", 215, 220. If
mhm.
they're rocking him like that, what are they gonna do to me? You know what I'm saying? But he runs in the locker room, gets the IV, comes back out, and has 100 yards receiving. One of
Yeah.
those very dramatic moments for us. And he
And
was kind of
CJ,
the
he shared that moment, that game when he was on
uh-huh.
it several weeks back. Man, what a warrior. What a
Oh
warrior.
my goodness, that dude right there, man, special player, but better human being though. He was up, and I forgot to mention earlier, he was also at the wedding as well. So, but yeah, he's a special guy.
Yeah, let's
But
take a
yeah,
little time out. I want y'all to listen to this who's who was just at the wedding back in February. We got all kind of NFL littered through there. Besides Jordan Matthews, we got Mr. SoCal Wesley Tate. We got Darius Sims, Trent Sherfield, Trey Tarpley, Stankovich, Crawford, Bell, Kimbrough, and just the list goes on. And the reason why I bring it up, it's not to embarrass you, but in fact, it's quite the opposite, CJ. It's my way of just it's showing that clearly during your time when you were a teammate at Vanderbilt and subsequent to that, you have not only been an exemplary teammate, but a hell of a friend to a lot of these guys because they've come from all over the country. So clearly that just speaks volumes to who you are. So I applaud that.
well, I appreciate that, and those guys are even better to me. I feel fortunate to have come to Vanderbilt when I did, and have guys to look up to like Jordan Matthews, and I could keep going. Spencer Pulley, guys like that. But also kind of have guys around my age too that we just kind of stuck together. That there was a lot of lows when we were there. There was highs as well, but when you really have to go through it together, you kind of have to shut the door and keep the outside from coming in. You really develop this bond that is lifetime. That lasts a lifetime. So I'm thankful for those guys, and I appreciate them showing up on my big day. So,
And I know you'll be there for them and probably already
oh
have
yeah,
for some.
no questions asked. Yeah, for
But
sure.
unlike some of the older guys who are on the show, you're so young. The statute of limitations in Tennessee for what you may or may not share is still there. So I want you to tread lightly on
Yeah.
whatever stories you get into.
Okay.
We want stories. We want to know something about somebody who did something.
Uh-oh.
So
Okay.
you need to
All
be
right.
thinking about that. But I want to go back to your freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to being redshirted. I want to go back to the fact that you're not on the field except for practices. Maybe you're on the sidelines, but you're not playing. Did you initially were you upset? Were you hurt? Were you okay with being told you're being redshirted? Did you feel it was the right thing, or it kind of hit hard?
A little bit of both. I think initially when it happened, because it happened prior to camp, so I hadn't necessarily played yet. I hadn't been able to
Right.
wiggle and do my thing on the field with pads on. So initially I was like, you know what? Maybe they see something that I don't, right? And that's all right. But once fall camp started and kind of the first couple games go by, I'm like, I really could play right now. You know what I mean? Like there's guys out here and not taking away from anybody on our team, but I feel like I could be just as productive, basically. And so, but when you do have such an older receiver room like we did, it made sense. These guys been there, done that, knew how to handle the big moments. And so it made sense, but that experience, being able to travel to stadiums, made it so much easier the following year, kind of knowing my schedule, knowing my routine, understanding how to block out the noise, all that. I came the very next year rocking and rolling. You know what I mean? It was, it made it a lot easier for me. But yeah, no, I definitely, that first year, I do feel like I could have gone in and gave them some good time, but we also had guys that could get it done though. Jonathan Krause was playing my position, and there aren't many people that played it better than he did. So
yeah, you had some great role models in that wide
yeah,
receiver.
yeah.
But speaking of not pledge class, recruiting class, we got Mr. SoCal. Wesley Tate has joined us for the evening. Thank you, Mr.
Tate. What's up, man?
We got John L. Thomas. We got Harold Lurchis.
Yeah.
Thank you fellas for being in the house.
Appreciate y'all.
Academically, did it hit you square in the face, or were you able to adapt to it pretty quick?
No, that's one thing I do appreciate going to a small private school is we were known to be an academic school and ranked in the state. And so that freshman year, honestly, it was a lot of repeat of what I did in high school, at least senior year, because you're taking a lot of preliminary classes, intro to this, intro to that. And I'm like, oh, I've done this before. So, that was fairly easy. It didn't really start ramping up until you get to like physics or something, or, I start getting into my major. I was poli-sci and corporate strategy. So that's when it kind of ramped up. But that first year and a half, I was kind of just smooth sailing, to be honest with you.
Well, that's you're lucky in that you did have a strong academic background coming in, because a lot of guys don't, or they think they do, and then it really is whoa. There's that big transition, and some guys wash out as a result.
Absolutely. I mean, it's stressful because the expectation for a large part of your life is mainly athletic, and then you get to Vanderbilt, and the expectation is not only physical, but it's also mental as well, and they are pushing you just as much in the classroom as they do on the field. And so it takes a special person to go to Vanderbilt, and I applaud everybody that did it and stuck it out and came out better on the other side. So
most came out better on the other side.
Yeah.
but you know what? For a lot of us who get redshirted, one, it's a year of growth, of course, and a year of adjustment. But learning how to prioritize and regiment your day is, I think, as important as getting your sleep and your rest, and being in the right place at the right time. And it doesn't leave a lot of time, even for the redshirt guys. It doesn't leave a lot of time for downtime, for socializing. You might get a couple hours on Saturday night or a rare Thursday. Were you a go out guy with the buddies, or were you more of, I'm staying home and just kicking it with all the guys in the dorm, or what was your style back then?
I mixed it up, just depending on the weekend. And, like I said, a lot of the times I was traveling with the team, so there wasn't a whole lot of going out, especially if we're on the road. But, there's a couple guys I enjoyed going out with, Spencer Pulley's of the world, and Chris Quintera. Those are some really good guys. And I won't put anybody on blast, but we had a good.
I got to interrupt you because Tate just commented he wants what's up. He wants to hear it.
So Wes Tate, since he's going to speak up, Wes Tate is Mr. Nashville, first of all. And don't let him tell you any differently. He can run for mayor right now and win. That dude right there, everyone in the city of Nashville knows Wes Tate, loves Wes Tate, and will do anything for Wes Tate. Wes Tate actually helped me out a lot during my recruiting process. When I was on my official visit, he was my host.
Mhm.
And, I am, just this small town private school kid, whatever it may be. And I'm just kind of in awe about how he moves around Nashville. And, at the time, there was kind of curfews and things like that for official visits. And, they take me out to dinner. We hang out kind of at the dorms for a little while. And then it gets close to curfew time. And Wes was like, all right, yeah, come with me. Just stay behind me. Don't worry about it. I got it under control, whatever. Wes walks up to the desk where we're supposed to sign in for curfew, whatever. He looks at the guy, he just shakes his head like this, and we turn around, walk out, keep doing what we're doing for the night. But that's the kind of pull Wes Tate has, not only at Vanderbilt, but in the city of Nashville. He is a guy, for
And
sure.
I
So
hear he's doing the same thing in San Diego as well.
I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
That's just who he is.
All right, I gotta ask, how thick was your Montgomery, Alabama syrupy accent at the time when you first got up to Nashville? Because we don't hear it now, but I want to know what it was like when you were 18.
It was bad. I got I got joked on quite a bit for my accent, and and it'll come out every now and then if I get excited with my buddies from back home. I've got slang and this, that, and the other that not everybody can understand or keep up with. But to me, I still have it, but I've been told by others that it has dwindled quite a
Yeah,
bit.
because you're a
So
professional, man. You're traveling to DC
yeah,
and out of town, but at
yeah.
least you don't have that twang from Troy or Prattville. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Let's just leave it at that.
thank goodness.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, for
Um,
sure.
all right, we rarely talk about game experiences and the wins and losses and all that, but I want to know if you recall the first game you played in or a significant a game that kind of from your sophomore year that or your redshirt freshman year, second year there, that kind of it maybe sticks in your mind because man, you're lining up and you're out there between the hashes and you're sitting in Jordan Hare. I mean, you're playing in Jordan Hare or in Bryant Denny or wherever it may be. That there was a moment that just kind of it just gave you a little smile to know that you had gotten to where you were.
You know what? There's a couple of moments. You know, the first being when we were playing. It was actually at our stadium in Nashville. We were playing UMass, and you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it even further back. It was we were playing South Carolina also at home, and I grew up just huge college football, huge SEC guy, and honestly, just looking across the field and seeing Steve Spurrier, I mean, that was enough for me. Like to
Oh
me, in my
wow.
book, in my household, that
Uh-huh.
guy is a legend. Florida Gator player, coach, all the above. Seeing him in that visor on the sideline, I'm like, man, I really made it to the SEC. That was a really big moment for me seeing him and actually scored that game. So first collegiate touchdown. And
From
then
who delivered the ball to you? Who threw it?
that ball was Patton Robinette.
Mm-hmm.
That ball was Patton Robinette. I had to think for a second just because at that year, we had a couple guys
I
rolling
was going
at
to
the
say you had
time.
a few that rotated, but now he's referred to as Dr. Robinette. But
Dr. Robinette,
that's right.
absolutely,
That's
and
right.
well deserved.
That's right.
But and then I guess another moment was the UMass game
Mm-hmm.
where it was one of those things where we felt like we were better, definitely more talented, deeper team than UMass.
Mm-hmm.
But we were so young at the time. This was the time where, Coach Franklin had just left. So a lot of guys, a lot of our recruiting class kind of got cut in half. And then we were such an old team the year before. So like all the freshmen are like playing now. All the guys on the scout team, they're all the guys that got, redshirted, they're actually starters now. So we're just a young team and we're making, bonehead mistakes and things like that. So that game kind of comes down to the wire.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, toward the end of that game, I'm on the right side on their sideline, headed into I guess we're past the 50 at this point, past midfield. And Patton, I believe he kind of fumbles the ball a little bit in the backfield, picks it up, and he chunks it right. And so it's me one-on-one with their corner,
Mhm.
and we're both going up for the ball. I get up a little higher than he does. We both kind of get the ball at the same time, almost simultaneously, and
Mhm.
he's ripping it down, and I'm ripping up, and I end up catching that ball. And I remember just standing up and looking into the stands, and I was like, "Man, this is a moment." I think it ended up being top 10 on Sports Center, and I eventually scored the 2-point conversion to kind of put us in the lead there during that game. So that was a cool moment for me. Just kind of I was doing that in high school, but you don't know that you can do it at the next level till you do it. And so kind of being counted on and relied on and finally coming through is a very there's a lot of satisfaction there.
I'll say it's probably a surreal moment. Plus,
Yeah.
CJ, there's a little bit of difference when you got 500 to 1,000 people sitting in St. James Stadium
Hmm.
versus close to 40,000 at home, just going nuts because of the moment.
Oh, it is it's totally. I mean, you get chill bumps thinking about it, honestly.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was a lot different. And I'll two more things. I'll be quick, but we had the Ole Miss game. So the Ole Miss game was so big the year before. That's the game we spoke about with Jordan,
Yeah.
where they beat us with seconds to go, literally seconds to go. That was humongous game. It kind of started a rivalry in a sense with us and Ole Miss,
Yeah,
but
that was a
um,
heartbreaker when that kid,
oh,
Jeff, whatever his name is, just
goes
took.
down there
I don't.
their
Mhm.
sideline. Yeah, that was so tough. And there were so many like the backside corner almost gets there to swipe the leg,
Right,
and there were
right.
so many opportunities for us to just like at least trip them up. But definitely a heartbreaker because we played a heck of a game. But so the very next year they
Mhm.
played the game in Nissan Stadium.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
I was like, oh
I
man, this is
remember
cool.
that. Yeah.
I never played in an
Yep.
NFL stadium before, so that was a cool experience. And then going to Starkville that year as well. That's when Dak Prescott and those boys were on a heater. They
Mhm.
were they like number 3 in the country at the time,
They
two
were
or
in the
three in the
top
country.
5. I know that.
Yeah, yeah, and
I think they were
and
ranked 1 at one point.
they were, and I
Yeah.
think they had lost to Alabama or somebody maybe the week before, so we got them pissed off, I think. So, but and actually, on the opposite side of the field, De'Runnya Wilson, we called him Bear. God rest his soul. He's not no longer with us, but he's a friend of mine from Birmingham. We used to play AU basketball together, and so he was a top receiver that year in the SEC, and so it was good to see him, but also experience all the cowbells.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were kind of the moments freshman year
Yeah.
that stood out for sure.
You're coming through high school and then into college when the explosion started with social media. Probably more
Hmm.
so your college, getting into college.
Hmm.
What impact in high school do you remember was social media, if at all, on your recruiting, on your communication with, I don't know if back then, if your parents allowed you or if you tried, or if you created like a brand, like a lot of up and
Hmm.
coming athletes. Was that
Hmm.
part of your um, high school years? Did it make an impact on your recruiting? Any of those things?
You know what? It was not a whole lot of social media at all at the time. I mean, Instagram may have started my senior year of high school.
Mhm.
I don't know the exact dates on all the socials, but it wasn't being used to recruit in any way at the time. I mean, I was truly cold calling people. Um, kind of using mutual friends or relationships to try to get in touch with guys, email, things like that. I went to every, camp, even if it wasn't kind of like the high level camps. I was just trying to get in front of people at the time. And, my parents sacrificed a lot of time and effort driving me all over the place to
Sure.
make it happen. But yeah, it was not what it was today. And even when my brother was coming through, he comes through 6 years later,
Mhm.
and, I know for a fact he had, double digit offers off of Twitter.
Mhm.
Hadn't talked to coaches before. They're like, hey, we got your number
That's what
from
I'm
so and
saying.
so. We saw you on Twitter. You got an offer. It was like that type of thing for him. Yeah.
Setting aside the big elephant in the room of transfer portal and NIL. Set that aside.
Right.
In today's in today's modern athlete coming out of high school or in high school, they're building their brand, they're making their reels, all that. And
Mhm.
it is mind blowing about how recruiting works through social media.
Mhm.
And I bring it up, and this is ultimately what I was going to get to, is it must create another level of stress for the high school athlete having to deal with all of that, which you didn't really much, and I certainly didn't because I'm so old. But it's not something that I would ever want to deal with.
Mm-mm. No,
I
I
don't know
mean,
if your
you're
brother really was it stressful for him?
very much so. I think that, and he's not a huge social media guy to begin with. He's very, old soul type of guy. He's gotten into it probably more recently post football than he did when he was playing or getting recruited. But yeah, no, it definitely adds another element to just your image and having that spotlight on you. I mean, we talked about earlier expectations, but now it's like, of course, you're supposed to do the right things behind closed doors as well, but everybody's got an iPhone now, and everybody's got a camera out, and so there's just a lot more exposure for the good and for the bad. It's kind of a catch-22 type of thing, but I don't envy that part of it. It was you got to deal with what you were dealing with on your own or just with your parents or with your
Yeah.
family. Now it's, if you lose an offer, if you do this or do that, it's like it's on social media and people are going to comment, people you don't even know, but they're not always going to be the nicest about it and
Oh,
everything.
far from it. It gives
Yeah.
everybody a platform to say, just to throw up verbally with
Yeah.
on X, Twitter. But one of the things, and I get it, I get this, what I'm about to tell you. I don't necessarily agree with it. Maybe it's a generational thing, or maybe it's just look at the front of, look at me
Mhm.
now kind of a thing. But you've got these kids who make, and I know we're getting off of you, but and I'm going to steer
No,
us
no,
back
it's
for
fine.
a
No,
second.
you're good. You're good.
But you got this pose, whatever the pose is of the moment, and then they put the emblems or the logos of all the colleges that they say they have offers, whether they do or not, that remains.
Mhm.
But I get it. I do get that part, but it doesn't mean it that I like it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
I'm not the
no,
only one.
I understand that. I get exactly where you come from, and with my brother being younger, I've kind of been in this generation of recruiting, and it's just it's almost cringeworthy to see what some of these guys will do for some attention. I've always been told just let your play do the speaking for you, and that's not always the case. And there was times where I've had to talk my brother down too, because it's hard not to get caught up in that. You see your friends and guys that you may know are highly ranked, and they're saying they got these offers, these offers, these offers, but a lot of those offers aren't committable offers, and that's one thing that I learned as
Right.
well. They starting to do now. Back then, getting an offer was like a big deal. You were like, oh man, like I have the opportunity to go to the school now.
And it
Just
meant more. It
it
meant
meant
more to
more.
me.
Oh, for sure. No, it. I tell you what, I got an offer from Troy and Southern Miss. But when I got those offers, man,
Mhm.
I think I smiled for 3 days. Those weren't the schools that I necessarily wanted to go to, but the fact that someone thought of me as a Division I football player
100%.
meant the world to me. I'm like, okay, it gave me a little extra bounce to my step. I really took it to heart that they thought of me that way.
Mhm.
And like you said, nowadays it's not as important. And a lot of these guys are posting non-committable offers. And my brother went through a situation where a coach told him straight up, "Don't worry about that. He can't commit to it anyway." So so it is that's what and they're these teams are having to be so competitive now, and you have to move on the spot. You wait too long, you may miss out on something, or you may rub a kid and his family the wrong way. So you kind of have to throw offers out there, but and so that's why they kind of came up with the idea of committable and non-committable offers.
I do not envy Javon Hay, Larry Black, any of those guys who have to recruit while they're coaching. I know they do a beautiful job. I know they've got it down pat, but man, they got a lot to deal with. They sure
Oh yeah.
do. But let's get back to CJD and number 19's world.
Yeah.
In the summers, did you go home? Did you stay in Nashville? What was going on for you in the summer times?
Yeah, out in Nashville, I only went home when they allowed us to go home, when we had a little break or whatever it may be. And usually those breaks were, in between sessions, you're still taking classes. But every summer I would take classes, do summer school, and was up there for training. And honestly, being from Montgomery, I just enjoyed Nashville so much. I didn't necessarily want to go home unless but only to see my parents, and my brother, because I would miss them. But other than that, comparing cities, I'd rather be in Nashville.
I want you to tell me the truth now. How many times have you stopped at the new Buc-ee's in Athens on your drive to and from Nashville on 65?
I have not stopped yet. I have not stopped yet. You know what? And especially being here in Birmingham now, it's like, man, I'm so close to home. I don't want to stop this train, man. I got to
That's
keep
right.
rolling.
That's right.
But I have seen it. It takes up, the whole side of on that
And
left side. It takes
look,
up a
I can speak
whole.
from experience on a Sunday midday coming home from Nashville. It was
Yeah,
a 40-minute experience just to get off the highway, get
yeah.
into the Buc-ee's, do my business, and get back on the highway. 40 minutes because there was so much traffic. Police are directing. I don't know why I got off on this, but
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And that's what I figured it would be. It is definitely a sight to see. They are very proud of it, clearly. And I usually see, you can see from the highway all the people over there, and I'm like, you know what? That is the last thing I want to do right now. I'm really looking forward to this Sunday nap when I get home. You know what I mean? So Birmingham's only about an hour and a half from here. I'm gonna keep it
That's
rolling.
right. That's right. You're not old enough to have Sunday naps, but those will come your day from day. All right, let's get into your final year. Let's go to your senior year.
Can you bring me the charger?
When
Yes.
you're preparing for your senior year, were you
Mhm.
academically preparing to graduate in December or in the spring of that same season, of that same calendar year or school term?
Right. Yeah. So I actually, and excuse me, my
No, go ahead.
charger,
We're good.
my my computer's dying on me. But yeah. So actually, coming into school, you kind of expect to go, four and done and kind of do it all, finish up in the spring, whatever it may be. But I tore my Achilles. Leading up into my sophomore year, redshirt sophomore year. I guess it was like the last week of camp before the regular season, tore my Achilles. So I always knew that I was going to finish not in the spring, but in that final year, after that final year in December, due to that Achilles injury. I just wanted to have another opportunity, have another shot to go at it post Achilles. So always knew it would be in December though.
How long was your rehab before you got back to normal activity?
You know what? I started running probably about 5.5 months in. I was about half a month early, maybe a month and a half early. So I tore it in August of 2020, or excuse me, not 2020, but it was 20, that had
15.
to be 15, I guess it was. Man, that was a long time ago. And I was back for spring practice that very next year. So
Well, now that we've kind of brought it up, and I don't mean to bring bad memories up,
yeah, no worries.
as a young athlete competing for playing time and starting and hoping to contribute, take us a little bit, CJ, into that mindset that when you got hurt, that must have been a very tough pill to swallow for a number of reasons.
Well, absolutely. So the year prior, I felt like I had a pretty decent season for a freshman, and was starting to get a little notoriety around the conference, things like that. Felt like going into that year, I was going to be the number one receiver, and everything was kind of lining up in my favor. And I definitely had the best fall camp of my career up to that point. And I attest a lot of that to Coach Hankton, who's now at LSU.
Mhm.
Just got me in tip-top shape, but also taught me what it meant to be a receiver and all the details that go into that. And, it's at the end of practice, last drill, and really I'm just catching punts, catching kick returns for the kickers. This is their drill. We're not even working on any type of
Mhm.
return scheme or anything like that. I'm just catching just to get reps in, right? And
Mhm.
literally just flukish. I catch a ball and push forward, and it snapped on me. And so the thoughts that went through my head were just incredible at that time. And it's your identity too, right? You've been playing ball since you were 5 or 6 years old, and there's so many horror stories, when it comes to the Achilles, where people's careers are over almost. They never come back the same. And so I just felt like I was coming into my moment, kind of having that breakout year in this conference, feeling really comfortable about who I was and what I was going to be able to do for our university, and then it all just comes crashing down, and it didn't make sense. It would be one thing if somebody hit me or whatever, but nobody was even around me, and
Were
so
you on
it was
natural
definitely
grass? Were you on natural grass at the time?
we were in the stadium. We were on turf.
Mhm.
Yep, we were in the
I
stadium.
know, and again, I don't know if the turf had anything to do with it, but it just sometimes those injuries, the non-contact injuries, you just never know when they're going to happen. I assume it was surgically repaired.
Yeah, so it was a rupture about 4 inches or so. It was surgically repaired. And like I said, about 5.5 months later, I was back out there on the field running, doing spring workouts. And the hardest thing about that coming back, I felt like speed came back fairly almost to 100%, probably around 90%. Of course, hands and stuff, I could work on even being injured.
Sure.
Strength was through the roof at the time because, I couldn't, for a long time, I couldn't walk or run. So I'm just bench pressing and doing buys.
You're bulking up.
Oh, I think I'd gotten up to about 212 all muscle. Like I was
And you were almost a three technique at that
no,
point.
really, I'm telling you, I had gotten huge during that process. And so, but the one thing that didn't really come back was my jumping ability, and that's one thing I was proud of, kind of
Yeah.
coming out of high school. I could jump pretty good, but after that Achilles, it was non-existent. I think I was probably at 36 after that. So,
CJ, when did you get your confidence back as an athlete?
man, mm-mm-mm. You know, that next season, I was out there. Um, and I was able to make some plays and things like that. I think a lot of it just due to football IQ, but never felt like I could run away from anybody or, have the same quickness that I had. It was probably the following year, that
Mhm.
following, kind of spring ball leading into the summer, fall camp, and then we go on that 3-0 run to start the season right before the Alabama game. That's when I started saying, okay, all right, like I'm back where I need to be. I feel just as
You're,
fast, just as quick.
you're building reps. You're
Yeah.
building you're building those reps. But go
Hmm.
go back for just a second. I meant to ask you whenever somebody gets hurt and they're out for the season, a lot of guys share that they feel detached from the team.
Hmm.
They're in Magoogan, they're in the training room, they're in the wherever everybody is, except they're not practicing. They really spend very little time in the locker room, and certainly not on the field, and they most likely don't travel at all. Did you have that feeling of being detached from the team, or was there something there that held, at least in your mind, whether it was some of your buddies or the circumstances that let you still feel like you're part of the team, even though you're not on the active squad right now?
You know what? That was probably the worst part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I mean, the what makes football what it is the camaraderie of it. Everybody's good athletes, everybody's fast, can jump, this, that, and the other. I mean, but and game days are special. Those are very obvious things, but the camaraderie of it, not being in the locker room, not being on the bus on the way to the plane or on the bus coming off the plane, not being in the jug line with the guys. That's when you really like talk and you really get to know each other, and you kind of just you play around and joke with each other. That's when you really feel you're closest with your guys, and none of that was going on for me during that time. I tell you what, I was fortunate of during that time was, and I meant to mention his name earlier, Andrew Jelks. Andrew Jelks was going through a torn ACL at the exact same time. So I think for both of us, having each other during that time, I mean, Andrew Jelks, he was the best left tackle. I mean, one of the best left tackles in the whole conference. He was truly a beast. And this was supposed to be his breakout year as well. So we were able to lean on each other quite a bit in the bad times and the good times. So if we were together more often than not during that year. So it's fortunate.
What I'm hearing is when y'all are working out together, he didn't take many plates off that bench. That's how you're getting big.
You know what? I'll say this. I'll say this. Now, any of the running backs and linebackers, I would compete with those guys. I would push them. You know what I mean? Kind of give them a little elbow, saying, "Hey, you're letting a receiver hang with you." But those offensive linemen, I would never. Those dudes are strong, country strong. I mean, he's got to take some plates off of me. Those dudes
That's
are
a whole
different.
zip code different and strong.
That's a different breed. I
That's
don't
right.
even mess with those guys, and that's probably why they were all my friends, because I knew who to mess with and who not to mess with.
Well, CJ, your recovery allowed you to come back, so much so that I know that you flirted with playing in the pros. I know that you were on the roster until the end of spring, excuse me, the fall camp and the exhibition games. I don't mean to rush this through, but I want you to share with us that experience about being with the Cardinals through the end of the preseason.
Oh man, it was a awesome opportunity, beautiful opportunity. Myself and also Trent Sherfield were out there at the same time. We both went out there as undrafted guys and didn't really. I know I'll speak for myself. I didn't really know what to expect at that time. Was pretty disappointed that after putting a lot of good things on tape during my Vanderbilt career, was kind of disappointed not to get an opportunity toward the end of that draft. But you know what? It was an opportunity, and of course was going to take it. And we had such a good time out there in Scottsdale. We were able to play with the likes of Larry Fitzgerald and Patrick Peterson, and Sam Bradford had just gotten signed there. Christian Kirk had turned out to be a good buddy of ours as well. So, I mean, we could not have asked for a better experience. We had a new coach at the time, Steve Wilkes. So we kind of had some growing pains as far as that's concerned. But, although I got cut, I would not take that back. Being able to sit in a film room with Larry and just see how, I mean, he's just a football genius, being able to pick his brain. And one thing I hold with me is, we're watching tape of practice, and, Trent would go run a route on tape, and we're looking at it. Then I would come up next, and Larry was like, "Hold on, both of y'all are on the same college team, and neither one of y'all got drafted? What are they doing at Vanderbilt?" And I was like, you know what? I'm taking that to my grave.
Yeah.
My kids will hear about that. Larry Fitzgerald thought me and Trent were good football players, and so that's one thing that I hold near and dear to my heart. So it was a great experience.
Man, you got J. Matt and Kraus in college, and you got Larry Fitzgerald, and now what did he just play his 7th or 8th season? Sherfield just completed another season.
Absolutely, and also shout out to him. Just signed with the Minnesota Vikings. So that
Does he have a
that
quarterback?
train's still rolling.
Who's going to be their QB, or are they going to draft one?
You know what? They signed Sam Darnold, I think, to a 1-year deal, and
Like I said, who's going to be their quarterback this year? Are they going to draft one?
right, right, yeah. You know, they've been throwing JJ McCarthy around recently, so we'll see. But yeah, they're definitely drafting a quarterback first round. It seems like so.
Well, CJ, you go through that experience, and I have to assume at some point at the end of your Vanderbilt career, maybe even into the preseason with the Cardinals, you're not a guy who makes decisions on a whim. I know you had backup plans for your career and post football career. Is the job that you're in now the job you started out and kind of envisioned, or is it just kind of evolved over the last several years? I know I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but
No, it's fun.
sometimes your plans play out exactly the way that you envision them, but then sometimes an opportunity shows up that you don't realize that's there and you got to hop and do it.
Right. No, you're exactly right. I mean, that's basically what happened was, of course, going into Vanderbilt, I don't know how good of a football player I am. I think I'm good, but we'll see once you line it up in the SEC. But I went into Vanderbilt wanting to go to law school. So poli sci was the way to take pre-law classes at Vanderbilt, and I minored in corporate strategy just to touch on some other things that may come up during that process. So was pretty hell bent on making that happen post football. I'll say this, it's hard to make that decision to put football down, and it was not one that I had anticipated doing as quickly as I did. But when it hits you, it hits you, and I just felt like I put my best foot forward there and did all that I could, and you kind of see the writing on the wall of kind of how the NFL sees you, and you got to decide whether or not that's a life you want to live. If you're going to be a practice squad guy and you kind of jump around a little bit, and that's not the life that I wanted to live. I felt like I went to Vanderbilt for a reason and thought that I could start making my way in the so-called real world. Going to get another job other than football. And I kind of thought about in my classes at Vanderbilt. You had folks that had offers to Google and Apple and all these other places as juniors. So in my head, I'm feeling like I'm a little behind too if I'm going to jump into this so-called real world. So it was one of those things where it happened the way it was supposed to happen, and I have no regrets on that. But getting back to what my original plan was, it was to go to law school. Got done playing football. I was like, man, I don't know if I want to go back to school though. You know what I mean? I just gotten so locked in with football, I wasn't sure. So I was going to give myself 6 months to kind of figure things out. Let the dust settle, see which direction I wanted to go in, and God just kind of placed a family friend in my life who my parents have known for years. And he said, hey, I put fillers out just saying, hey, I'm back in town looking for work, this, that, and the other. And next thing you know, this guy said, hey, have you ever heard of lobbying, government affairs, anything like that? And I said, no. I was poli-sci major, but they don't talk about that part of politics. You know what I mean? When you're in school, that's not in the history books. So I kind of shadowed him for a little while. And I guess a couple months later, I started working for a law firm, actually, Bradley Arant, but I was doing their lobbying though. I was a junior associate or however you want to call it for them during that upcoming legislative session. So that's kind of how I fell into that, and I'm still doing it to this day. I finished legislative session with Bradley and said, you know what? Montgomery is exactly what I thought it was. I love it. I'm so grateful to be from this hometown, but wanted to get back to Nashville, started doing government affairs in Nashville, and as of last summer, moved down to Birmingham doing the exact same thing, and I'm loving it. So,
Isn't it interesting? It's a lot of times it's not necessarily what you know, but it's that networking. It's who you
mhm,
know. And we've got
absolutely.
a couple more minutes, and that's what I wanted to ask you. When guys come on the show and they talk about their experiences at Vanderbilt, it's obviously it's all over the board. Some love their experience, some not so much. But a lot of guys choose to stay in that, I call it the McGugan bubble. It's
Mm-hmm.
the football world bubble. It's not getting outside the athletes that they know and are comfortable with. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing. Other guys network and join fraternities or other social organizations, and they really maximize the networking that's there at Vanderbilt, which is quite special if you find it.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you fall in your years on campus? What was your experience more like?
You know what? My parents growing up were always saying, "Hey, listen, football's got an expiration date." So they always kind of instilled, you know, academics, but also networking. It's always been very important in our family. So I tried to take advantage of the opportunity I had at Vanderbilt, understanding that, if certain people are walking around that don't look like athletes or coaches, they're probably someone of significance at Vanderbilt. And so a lot of the times I would just go shake hands, say, hey, introduce myself, this, that, and the other. And so, um, you know, during my time at Vanderbilt, I got to know Mr. John Ingram pretty well. He would travel with us sometimes, and his son would be at practice throwing the football around, and I'd throw with him a little bit. And so got to know him well. And, Mr. Ingram actually helped me get my job in Nashville. When I moved from Montgomery to Nashville, he set me up with an interview with a lobbying firm in Nashville. So that, right off the bat, that networking opportunity, I'll say it would not have happened without him, because if it weren't for that, I'm a first year lobbyist. Basically, I would just have to cold call around and just hope somebody take my call and take an interview. So fortunate that, he was kind of already in that world a little bit and was able to introduce me to the right people. And then also while I was there, I did some uh, I worked during the summer with Judge Wyatt and Judge Dozier in the criminal courts. And, to this day, I'm grateful for that experience, because met a whole lot of people during that as well. So I definitely enjoyed being around the guys at McGugan and hanging out and just being guys. But um, I did take advantage of the opportunity to network while I was also at Vanderbilt. So.
And that's one of the things. It's not a criticism at all. It's just an observation by me. We haven't done a good enough job over the years of creating and cultivating that networking for
Mhm.
student athletes, regardless of your sport.
Right.
They're doing it now. They're
Hmm.
building it in a hurry. The Ingram Student Athlete Center for Success is phenomenal. They're doing
Hmm.
an awesome job. And this is just kind of my pitch to everybody who's listening or watches this, is to join the Black and Gold Club. Make
Hmm.
yourself available. There's no cost. Just make yourself available to be a mentor, to be
Yes.
a potential employer, or offer an internship. We have so many fabulous football player alums who do all these wonderful things, like what CJ's doing is so unique, that we need to make those things available. And I think we're doing a much better job. And I applaud what they've done the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And I don't know everybody that's involved, but I know a couple guys I speak with. Is George Smith, Javon Marshall, doing an excellent job over there. And I appreciate what they do. Javon Marshall, former teammate of mine, he was there my freshman year playing strong safety. So kudos to those guys for doing that, because to your point, for a while there, we did not have those contacts. We did not have that networking base. When I decided to get into this world, I didn't know who to call, right? I was just fortunate enough to, make a couple connections outside of football during my time. But if it wasn't for that, I would not have, known which direction to go. So it's definitely important. And like you said earlier, a lot of times in life, it's more about who you know than what you know. And sometimes people just need an opportunity. They need that door open so they can go in there and show exactly what they can do. They just need the opportunity.
And I think that's why this show and our football Facebook group are so important for building those connections and those communities. We have over 450 former players going back to the 1950s, to guys who played on the team last year who were in our group, and just That communication is just so vitally important, and I just love seeing that interaction. Number 19, I cannot thank you enough for spending some time with me tonight. This has been great.
Well, thank you for having me. This is an awesome platform that you have here, and I encourage everybody if they get the opportunity to take it and enjoy reliving some moments. Bernard, you're awesome, man. I can't wait to go grab some lunch with you here soon soon here in Birmingham.
Well, don't hang up. Well, let me sign off because I got to tell you about a lunch coming up.
Okay, great.
Guys, I've got Commodores lined up from now through into June. So keep coming back Tuesday nights. Check the Facebook group. You'll see the lineup. We've all in 2 weeks, we're having a panel of walk-ons from different decades, and their experiences are so unique, particularly at a school like ours. Some awesome stories are going to be shared. So keep coming back. Have a good week. Anchor down.
Anchor down.